In February 2005, police in Wichita, Kansas arrest a 59-year-old compliance officer named Dennis Rader. He is a husband, a father, and the elected president of Christ Lutheran Church. For decades, neighbors describe him as organized and dependable. Few imagine he is responsible for a series of murders that begin in 1974. If stories like this matter to you, consider subscribing, because what happens next reveals how this system truly works. Rader lives a structured life. He serves in the United States Air Force before settling in Kansas. He marries in 1971 and raises 2 children. He works for ADT installing security systems, then later becomes a municipal compliance officer in Park City. He enforces local codes. He issues citations for overgrown lawns and loose animals. He presents himself as orderly and precise. Inside his church, he is trusted. He helps manage congregational affairs. He handles responsibilities that require access and oversight. Members see him as steady and devout. His public identity is consistent for decades. But beginning in January 1974, Wichita police investigate the murders of 4 members of the Otero family. The killer binds his victims. He later sends letters to media outlets describing the crimes. He gives himself a name, BTK, which stands for bind, torture, kill. Over the next 17 years, 10 people are murdered in the Wichita area. The victims include women of different ages and 1 man. The crimes appear calculated. The killer communicates intermittently with law enforcement and reporters, seeking attention while avoiding capture. Investigators form a task force. They collect physical evidence. They compare fibers, handwriting, and witness accounts. In the 1970s and 1980s, forensic science has limits. DNA testing is not yet widely available. Leads fade. Years pass without arrests. The case grows cold. During this period, Rader advances in his personal life. He earns a degree in criminal justice from Wichita State University. He remains active in his church. He complies with routines. There is no public connection between him and the BTK investigation. In 2004, after years of silence, BTK resurfaces. A letter arrives at a local television station. It references earlier crimes and includes details known only to investigators. The renewed communication reopens the case in public view. Police establish a new task force. They analyze every message. They warn media outlets to preserve evidence carefully. BTK begins leaving packages in public places. He sends photocopies, dolls bound with string, and written statements. Each item is processed for fingerprints and DNA. Investigators trace the origin of materials. They study postmarks and delivery routes. The killer asks police a question through a letter. He wants to know if a floppy disk can be traced. Authorities respond publicly through the newspaper, stating it cannot. In February 2005, a purple floppy disk arrives at a television station. Forensic examiners recover deleted data. Metadata reveals that the disk was last used by someone named Dennis. It also references Christ Lutheran Church. Investigators search public records. They identify Dennis Rader as the church president. He lives in Park City. He fits the timeline. Surveillance begins. Officers collect items discarded from Rader's home. They obtain a court order for a DNA sample from his daughter's medical records. The DNA profile is compared to biological evidence from a 1974 crime scene. The profiles match. The evidence establishes a genetic link between Rader and the BTK killings. On February 25, 2005, officers conduct a traffic stop. They arrest Rader without incident. He is transported to the Sedgwick County Jail. During questioning, he provides detailed accounts of the murders. He describes planning, surveillance, and methods of restraint. The information corresponds with case files. News spreads quickly through Wichita. Members of Christ Lutheran Church learn that their president is charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. Community reaction is measured but stunned. Many struggle to reconcile the public image with the crimes described in court documents. In June 2005, Rader pleads guilty to all 10 murders. There is no plea agreement reducing charges. Kansas does not have the death penalty for crimes committed before 1994. He faces life imprisonment. During the plea hearing, he calmly recounts each killing. The court records his statements. Family members of victims attend the proceedings. The judge accepts the plea. In August 2005, the court sentences Rader to 10 consecutive life terms. He becomes eligible for parole after 175 years, effectively ensuring he will remain in prison for the rest of his life. He is transferred to the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. Inside prison, Rader enters a controlled environment defined by routine. He is classified within the state system. His movements are regulated. Contact with the outside world is monitored. He corresponds through letters under supervision. He has limited privileges consistent with his custody level. The structure contrasts with the control he once exercised over his crimes. The prison system processes him like any other inmate convicted of multiple homicides. Intake evaluations assess his health and security risk. He receives an inmate number. Personal property is restricted. Daily life follows schedules for meals, counts, and recreation. There is no special designation beyond the notoriety attached to his name. For the victims' families, the guilty plea closes the criminal case but does not end the impact. Court transcripts document the facts. Law enforcement agencies archive evidence and reports. The BTK task force disbands after decades of work. Christ Lutheran Church continues operating after Rader's arrest. Congregational leadership changes. The institution separates itself from the crimes. The broader Wichita community reflects on how the offender maintained a public identity while committing acts in secret. The case influences investigative practices. It highlights the role of digital forensics. Metadata from a floppy disk becomes a decisive lead. DNA comparison confirms identity decades after the first crime. Law enforcement agencies across the country review procedures for handling communications from offenders seeking attention. Dennis Rader remains incarcerated in Kansas. His sentence keeps him within the state prison system for life. The record of his crimes is preserved in court documents and archived evidence. The public image he once maintained no longer defines him. The legal system records him as an inmate serving multiple life sentences for 10 murders. After sentencing in August 2005, Dennis Rader enters the Kansas Department of Corrections as inmate number 0089517. He is transferred to the El Dorado Correctional Facility. The prison houses some of the state's most serious offenders. Security is structured. Movement is scheduled. Counts are conducted several times each day. Doors open and close on command. Rader is placed in a high-security environment. His housing assignment limits contact with the general population. Like other inmates serving life sentences, he follows a fixed routine. Wake-up occurs early. Meals are eaten in designated areas or within the housing unit, depending on status. Recreation time is controlled. Communication is monitored. The notoriety of his crimes does not alter the institutional framework. The prison system processes him through intake evaluations. Medical staff assess physical health. Mental health professionals conduct standard screenings. Classification officers determine custody level based on offense history, behavior, and risk assessment tools. His crimes are severe, but his institutional behavior becomes the determining factor for privileges within prison walls. In the months following his arrival, mail volume increases. Letters come from media outlets, researchers, and members of the public. Prison staff review correspondence under established regulations. Inmates are permitted written communication, but materials are inspected for contraband or violations of policy. Rader responds selectively. His outgoing mail is also screened. Kansas prisons operate under structured schedules designed to reduce unpredictability. Inmates assigned to work details perform maintenance, food service, or cleaning tasks. Participation depends on classification and behavior. Life-sentenced inmates may receive assignments within secure areas. Work does not shorten a sentence, but it can influence housing conditions and daily privileges. Rader's daily life becomes repetitive. Morning count. Breakfast. Assigned activity. Midday count. Evening lockdown. The routine contrasts with the autonomy he exercised before arrest. Within prison, decisions are limited to small choices. When to read. When to write. When to exercise within permitted hours. The El Dorado facility enforces clear disciplinary codes. Infractions lead to sanctions such as loss of recreation, restricted commissary access, or placement in segregation. Compliance maintains stability. Reports indicate that Rader follows institutional rules. There are no widely documented incidents of major disciplinary violations. Victims' families continue to monitor developments from outside. The plea hearing transcript remains part of the public record. During that hearing, Rader described each murder in direct, factual language. The court did not allow extended commentary beyond the necessary elements of the plea. The legal system emphasizes closure through sentencing, not extended narrative. Within prison, media access is limited. Interviews require approval from correctional authorities. Over time, select communications from Rader appear in documentaries and academic discussions. Each request passes through review processes. Security and victims' considerations remain central factors in approval decisions. Kansas abolished the death penalty in 1965 and reinstated it in 1994, but it does not apply retroactively to Rader's crimes. His sentence of 10 consecutive life terms ensures incarceration for the remainder of his natural life. Parole eligibility is set far beyond a normal lifespan. The structure reflects statutory guidelines in place at the time of the offenses. The BTK investigation becomes a case study in criminal justice programs. Law enforcement agencies examine how communication from offenders can both hinder and assist investigations. The floppy disk evidence is taught as an example of digital traceability. Metadata, often overlooked by casual users, becomes decisive proof in court. Inside El Dorado, daily operations continue regardless of external attention. Officers conduct regular cell searches. Surveillance cameras monitor common areas. Electronic systems track movement. The facility maintains layered security designed to prevent escape and reduce violence. High-profile inmates remain subject to the same procedures as others in similar classifications. Rader ages within the institution. Health care is provided by the state under constitutional requirements established by U.S. Supreme Court precedent. Chronic conditions are managed through prison medical services. Appointments occur inside secure units or at outside facilities under guard supervision when necessary. Public interest in the case resurfaces periodically. Anniversaries prompt renewed reporting. Former investigators give interviews describing the decades-long effort. Church members reflect on institutional safeguards and the limits of personal knowledge. The separation between public persona and documented conduct remains central to discussion. For correctional staff, the presence of a notorious inmate is procedural rather than symbolic. Their responsibility is containment and compliance with policy. Professional distance is required. Records document behavior, health status, and security level. The file grows over time with routine entries. The prison environment imposes structure. There is no basement office, no municipal patrol, no church leadership role. Authority shifts entirely to the institution. The contrast is practical rather than dramatic. Schedules replace autonomy. Regulations replace secrecy. Outside the walls, Wichita continues normal civic life. Law enforcement agencies archive evidence from the BTK investigation. Physical items are preserved under chain of custody standards. Digital records are stored for future reference. The case remains closed legally, but administratively it remains documented in detail. The broader prison system in Kansas houses thousands of inmates serving sentences ranging from short terms to life imprisonment. Rader becomes one among many serving life without realistic parole. The correctional system focuses on order, not narrative. Time passes in measured increments marked by counts and calendar years. The transformation from church president to inmate is complete within the structure of the state. Identity inside prison is defined by conviction and classification. Titles held outside carry no operational meaning within the facility. Beyond the prison walls, the BTK case continues to influence law enforcement policy and public understanding of serial crime. The Wichita Police Department conducts internal reviews after the 2005 arrest. Investigators analyze what allowed the offender to evade capture for more than 3 decades. They document the limits of earlier forensic tools and the importance of preserving physical evidence over long periods. The role of digital forensics becomes central to training programs. The floppy disk recovered in 2005 contains metadata linking it to Christ Lutheran Church and to a user identified as Dennis. That information is obtained through standard forensic software. The recovery of deleted files demonstrates how routine digital traces can become courtroom evidence. Police departments across the country incorporate similar techniques into investigative practice. DNA analysis also becomes a focal point. Biological evidence collected in 1974 remains preserved for decades. Advances in testing allow comparison to a sample obtained indirectly from Rader's daughter through a court order. The match confirms the suspect's identity with statistical certainty accepted by the court. The case reinforces the value of maintaining evidence even when immediate results are unavailable. Within Kansas, the prosecution of Dennis Rader follows established legal procedure. There is no trial because he enters a guilty plea. The court requires him to provide factual basis for each count of murder. The judge questions him to confirm understanding and voluntariness. Each admission becomes part of the official transcript. The sentencing hearing allows victims' families to present impact statements. These statements are recorded but do not alter the mandatory life terms. For the families, the plea eliminates the uncertainty of a contested trial. It prevents prolonged appeals over factual guilt. However, life sentences without realistic parole mean the offender remains alive in custody. This outcome reflects Kansas law at the time of the crimes. The legal system applies statutes as written rather than retroactively adjusting penalties. Christ Lutheran Church continues operating after leadership changes. The congregation confronts the reality that a trusted president concealed violent acts for decades. Church officials cooperate with investigators during the arrest phase. No evidence suggests institutional involvement in the crimes. The distinction between individual conduct and organizational identity becomes part of public discussion. Academic researchers study the BTK case as an example of compartmentalization. Court records show that Rader maintains employment, family relationships, and civic roles while committing murders over a span of years. Experts examine how offenders can separate public behavior from criminal activity. These studies rely on documented evidence rather than speculation. Inside El Dorado Correctional Facility, routine remains unchanged by outside analysis. Inmates serving life sentences adapt to long-term confinement. Access to educational programs depends on security classification and resource availability. Participation does not alter release dates for those with effectively irreversible sentences. Institutional records indicate whether inmates comply with program requirements and behavioral standards. Media interest resurfaces periodically. Documentary films and books rely on court transcripts, police reports, and public records. Requests for interviews are evaluated under correctional policy. Approval considers security, victims' rights, and administrative workload. Some communications are granted. Others are denied. Each decision is procedural. The Kansas Department of Corrections maintains data on inmate populations, costs, and facility operations. Life-sentenced inmates represent a long-term financial and administrative commitment. Housing, medical care, and security extend across decades. The system allocates resources accordingly. There is no special budget category for notoriety. Expenses are calculated under standard formulas. Public memory of the BTK crimes remains tied to Wichita. Memorials and private remembrances honor the victims. Law enforcement archives preserve investigative files. Digital copies supplement physical records. The case serves as a reminder that extended investigations may eventually reach resolution through incremental advances in technology. Rader continues to age in custody. Annual reviews assess classification status and medical condition. The structure of consecutive life terms means release is not anticipated. Parole eligibility, set at 175 years, exceeds a normal lifespan. The sentence functions as permanent confinement. The broader prison system in the United States faces ongoing scrutiny regarding cost, overcrowding, and rehabilitation outcomes. The BTK case intersects with these discussions only in limited ways. It illustrates the endpoint of the criminal process for the most serious offenses. Arrest, plea, sentencing, incarceration. The sequence is linear and documented. For correctional officers, daily responsibility centers on safety and order. High-profile inmates require the same supervision protocols as others in comparable custody levels. Professional standards emphasize neutrality. Personal views about the crime do not alter procedure. The investigation that begins in 1974 concludes formally in 2005, but its administrative presence continues in archives and institutional memory. Evidence storage policies, digital forensic training, and DNA preservation protocols evolve partly because of cases like this. Dennis Rader remains incarcerated in Kansas State Prison. His crimes are recorded in official documents. His sentence remains in effect. The legal system's response is complete and ongoing at the same time. One man maintains a public identity as a church president and municipal officer while secretly committing murders. Decades later, routine forensic work exposes him. The correctional system absorbs him into a regulated environment where time is measured by counts and calendar years.